Hi YouTube. Now, as promised, I wanted to explain some of the problems that I've faced as a modeler, certainly using an airbrush. And one of the problems is the correct consistency of paint. A lot of people say make it like milk, the same consistency of milk. I was a little bit on the thicker side of milk until I started watching this American chap who was he's a fantastic airbrush artist. For his videos, please check out my subscribed area on my channel, I suppose. But basically, it made me think, right, well, I want to try and help out with people, as I said, and this is one of the first problems I encountered, is if you get too watery. Now, make no mistake, sometimes this technique is actually desired. If you want a fairly thick wash being put onto a model, you will want to do something like this. You overwater your paint. Hopefully you might be able to see that. But basically what you do is you overwater your paint, and it's, you know, I would say that's looking quite milk-like. But sometimes it's a little too milk-like, and therefore it gets very watery. So I'll just show the effect on this. This is one of my skeletons. I'm waiting for a rather watery section of my skeleton to be I'm doing a tutorial on painting a skeleton, this one in fact, and it's showing some sort of aspects of this problem. Now, the main problems with these types of models, I mean the GW models are pretty fantastic anyway, but basically we've got issues where you've got the depressions, as you would expect on a skeleton, by the feet and around the back ends of the knees and various other places, and that can collect paint, and sometimes that is completely and utterly undesirable. I said if you're wanting a wash where you want the recesses to be a slightly darker shade or whatever, if you're doing skeletons and you really want to take your time on it, then you might do several coats of different washes and therefore collect different shades of colour in there. But this is one issue that if you are faced, you know, this I'll give you the issue and of course how to deal with it. Now, as you can see, that's looking quite pathetic. As I said, as a wash, if I wanted him to be grey with some sort of recesses being a bleached bone, then that's basically very undesirable if I want him to look nice and sort of uniform all the way through. Now, as you can see, the water, well, it is coloured water in effect, has collected in all the recesses, and also you can see it's around here as well. And even though, I mean, there will be some people watching this thinking, well, hang on a minute mate, you know, if you're doing stupid things like that then you deserve it, and you know, why not try and tell us something new? But basically some people, one of my good friends who enjoys gaming and stuff, he had never used an airbrush and therefore didn't really know what to do. Didn't know if the paint was too thick or too thin, what have you. Basically, if you're faced with something like that, you can do a quick dip in some water. That's absolutely fine. As you can see, there's a nice lovely section there. Use your paint water, that's absolutely fine, and in general it will wash clean. This has been undercoated. When you'll see my skeleton, my Cannon fodder skeleton tutorial, you'll notice that it is it's undercoated in grey, as I explained in that video. But basically, if you want to get rid of it, you know, you're not going to do too much harm by just basically dipping it or washing it in water, and basically that deals with that issue. And then what you will want to do, depending on how confident you are, you can either basically completely wash out the substance, the amount of paint you have in your brush. You can wash it out and basically restart again. And normally what I try to do is, I mean, of course I use the game colour range more than I do use GW paints. I do have GW paints, but it's easier to use this stuff because it's got a dropper bottle, which is lovely. And I try to use a sort of almost a one-to-one mixture of like paint to a bottle of this, which is a mixture of, if it gets into some sort of focus, I don't know if you can see that, it's a mixture of flow aid and water. Now sometimes the consistency isn't what I require, and sometimes I will just basically go to my normal water and leave it as that. Sometimes I might want just the tiniest amount of increase of liquidity for this, and therefore what I will do is I will use my flow aid. I'll use my like one-to-one mixture, I'll put it in, use my flow aid, and then as I give it a quick stir with this old brush, I'll make sure it's still quite wet and it's actually dripping, and that extra amount of water does add, and basically just dilutes it just a tiny fraction more, but less than what one of these dropper bottles will give you. So basically, it's something you've got to try and practice with. As I said, I used to go on the thicker side of milk consistency, and one issue that I had was, I mean, it was gone a little bit too thick, and I was clogging up my my airbrush a little bit too much. And so watching this chap on his YouTube channel, I have to get his name, I have to try and remember it, he basically said, you know, you've got to use thinner paints, and that's very true. On my skeleton tutorial, it's quite thin. It's maybe a little thinner than I should have put in, but I will just do 2 blasts of that and it should be all fine. But basically, as I said, if it's a little too thin, either refresh your airbrush with a new solution. You know, it is a personal preference thing. As I said, I go for sort of maybe 1-to-1 or 1-to-2, so 1 of this and 2 of the flow aid mix. So hopefully that will help, and happy gaming. I shall catch you people later. Cheers.